A second. Okay, so before we start animating, we do need to set up the workspace, get to know our rig, what's capable of doing. We have to know what we're gonna do, have a little plan, and I'm giving you the plan for this walk, so we're all gonna do the same walk, same timing of it. Now, sometimes you cannot do, very often in animation, you cannot just do everything that you want to do. There are some directions that you need to follow. If you're part of a team that animates the same character, and that character walks in a certain way, so supervisor has decided how this character walks. So then, as you're just animator on a team that's going to animate this character, you have to animate the character that way. You cannot animate that character in some other way, because it will look weird if this character in every scene walks differently. That makes sense? So you should be able, yes, to make original entertaining walk as an animator, but you should also be able to follow a specific walk if it needs to be done a specific way. Okay, so 3 windows workspace. I guess if your scene open just in the perspective window, first thing you can try is click on your existing shortcut here on the left. You see my cursor? It should get your 3 windows up. Right? If you don't have that done, please do it. Do I need to repeat how to create this shortcut for all of you? No? Take your silence as approval. So basically, when you click on your little icon here on the left, you should get 3 windows open. There's a chance that the render cam will not be showing correctly. But your perspective window, you can check. Only thing that you see in there will be the NURBS curves, NURBS surfaces, and polygons. And hopefully we'll see no grid in there. Okay. So your render cam, if it's showing, great, keep using it. If it doesn't show, go to panels, perspective, and then you're going to see that there are a couple of cameras created. The don't move camera, there is a camera 1 and some perspective camera. Okay, so what I recommend is use the do not move camera and select it and rename it to the render cam, or whatever name you used previously for the render cam. Okay. So this will make sure that we stay consistent. The 3 window shortcut works correctly. Bottom window, make sure you see the graph editor. If you don't see it, just go to, but make sure that it's not cut off somewhere inside. If it is, close it, and go to panels, panel, and click on the graph editor. So that should show the graph editor on the bottom window. Again, if you did not save the workspace, save it now, so you can get it up by clicking on the shortcut. Any questions? As far as the rendering and playblasting goes, please just double check. Go to the render settings and change, if needed, settings. Make sure that the renderable camera is your render cam, and that the image size it is 960, right? 540, right? You see it immediately, the black resolution gate has changed as I was typing the numbers and pressing enter. While you add it, you can go to playblast settings and make sure that Display size goes from the render settings, scale is 1, and if possible, create the encoding H.264. So this is a half of your first 2 hours assignment that you're going to need to submit a snapshot of. So we still now need to create 3 mel buttons. So you see this character, how many selection curves it has? So it would take us probably just an hour or 2 to get everybody create the mel buttons correctly and working if you do it from the scratch. So what I have done is I have provided you guys with the scripts. So download them and simply open it up. This is this long script to do the keyhole. See, now understand that 1 or 2 little things could go wrong, and then something would not get keyed or would drive you nuts. So it's easier if you have this. So open it up, go to edit, select all, edit copy, open up Maya. We did this with the Smashball assignment. So it's reinforcing it. So open up the script editor, clear it. So make sure that there are 2 windows, top and bottom. So we're going to paste this to the bottom window. Make sure that the mel tab is the active one. We'll press Command V to paste the command in the bottom window. Right mouse click and hold, and then go to execute and let go. Then highlight script that has popped up to the bottom, to the top window. Go to File, Save Script to Shelf, name it keyhole. Okay. And then tell it if it's a mel script. So when you click on mel, new mel button will be created on your active shelf. Then you can test it. So I guess the best thing is that click on frame 1 and then click on your keyhole. So if you have nothing selected, it will look like you didn't do anything. But if you start clicking on body parts, then you're going to see that some body parts, or most of them, do have a red key line in the timeline. Does that make sense? Some of the body parts, when you click on them, like this big circle on the ground, it has no key. We don't want to use that control. Just that's good. Okay, we don't want to have a key for it, because this is the main control. If you move this control, we're going to mess up the feet controls. Okay, the feet are looking and relating to that main control. So if you move it, then the feet will be moving with it. Okay, so to prevent sliding and be able to place a foot and keep it in one place, don't mess with that main control. Is the origin. Is put at the origin, and usually they use it to connect different cycles together, so there's some consistency between different animations that you want to merge, transition from. I am not a specialist for the game animation, so they might have, each studio might have its own techniques of animating. But if you know this, then you can catch up easily with whatever else they might be doing. Okay, so where were we? The mel buttons. So I created the keyhole, and I just key tested, and it does seem that whatever I click, the most things, even the letters floating above the head, they have a key. Okay, so the next key is the select all. So select all selects everything that we have just keyed. Select all. It looks shorter because it knows to select all the rotations and translations of those body parts. That's what made the other key all so long, because you had to key individually translations and rotations, X, Y, and Z. So still go to edit, select all, edit, copy, open Maya, open script editor, clear it, paste it in the bottom meld tab, right mouse click, go to execute, let go. Oh, let's just finish this. There's something with the other meld button. Highlight, go to File, save script to shell, and this is select all. Say OK, click on meld. Okay, you see what happened when I executed this command? I got some warnings here. Okay. So I just want to make sure that this is not saved on a shelf. So I'm going to go over that newly created meld button, right mouse click, and then click on edit. And I'm going to simply delete those lines that say warning. Close it. And I believe I have the same problem with the key all. Maybe. Yes. So the end of the key all meld button, I have ended up with lines that say result and 2 lines with warnings. So I'm simply going to delete those. If you didn't have those, you're fine. Makes sense what I did here, the last thing? I'm not going too fast. So the final meld button that we're going to create will be the spine select. Spine consists from 3 controls: low back, mid back, and up back. So rather than having to zoom in on a character and hold shift when you're selecting all 3 of them, we're going to have a meld button that selects all 3 of them at once. Just one button press. Okay? So it makes selection of the spine faster. Why would you want to select all 3 of them together? So you can turn and rotate all 3 of them together at once, rather than doing each of them individually, which is also faster and also creates a nicer arc in the spine. Okay.
Is there going to be any point in time when we're making the walk when we want to control those 3 individual parts of the spine on their own? Or are we always going to control them?
Not for this walk. I mean, if you're animating your scene and you have some specific reason for it, so if you have justification to do so, yeah, you do everything that you need to do.
Okay, but for this walk, we don't need to. We can just
No,
use the button.
you do have option, instead of using and turning all 3 at once, I'm going to let you do it with spine individually if that is better for you. Although I don't see why it would be.
No. Definitely easier with the button.
So the other option is simply you would select the low back, rotate it in Y and Z, and then click on the other body and turn it. It's 3 steps, which you can do in 1 step by using the slide meld button. It's also easier later to fix and correct things in the graph editor, because you can also fix in the graph editor all 3 curves at once rather than one individually. And really, I'm going to create this one from the scratch because it just involves 3 spine controls. So clear this. So zoom in. So the low back. This is the control. You guys never worked with this rig. How could I say? It's just this is the main. The large curve is the hip control, also called the center of gravity. I'm sorry for stumbling there. Okay, so the center of gravity, that is the main. That's the power center of the character. Okay. So this is not part of the spine. Spine rotates in opposite direction from the hips, and this controls the hips. Okay. So spine controls are 3 controls above the hip control. So I'm gonna start, so I can clear this. So I click on the low back. So I see here it says low back. So the first selection is free, so it's select R. You see when I say select R? It's here, it says select R. That means I'm not adding this selection to anything else. So now I'm gonna press and hold Shift and click on the mid back. So I see now this second line says select PGL. That means it's added to the selection of the first one. And then I click on the up back. And that's all, really. So rather than doing 3 steps of selecting this, we're gonna have Mel button that's gonna select all 3 of those at once. All I need to do is now highlight, go to File, set script to shelf. This is, I call it spine. I guess you can call it anything that makes sense to you. Back, or okay, it is a Mel script. So this, so now when I press this Mel button, spine, and then press W, see I can rotate the body in Z. Okay, you need to learn your world, 3D world axis. If you're not sure, look at those little lines here. Okay, so you see the Z is the one that kind of goes up and down towards us and away. So when I rotate something around the Z axis, that's what they call Z rotation. You're keying a Z rotation. When you rotate something about the Y axis, which is this way, then you're keying the Y rotation. Make sense? Okay, so you need to master that. So basically this is when I do rotate the spine like this or this, I'm turning it around the Z axis. That makes sense? So that's going to be a Z rotation for this character. If I turn the character using this curve, so now I'm rotating around the Y axis. So this creates Y rotation keys. See the number values changing here? Making sure that we covered it. Because that's most important part of today's lecture. We're going to go over contacts and passing poses. Each of them has the extreme rotations of the body that you need to apply and learn. It's already 1:46. Okay, maybe we need to speed this up a bit. Let's go over the rig now a little bit here as we go. So we have the 3 model. So now you need to take a snapshot of this. You know how to do this? If you hold Shift, Command, and press 4, then you should be able to kind of take a snapshot of a screen area. I would like to see the name that on the top capture the name, so I know you're giving me your workspace, not somebody else's. Okay, so the snapshot will have key all, select all, spine, perspective window, render cam, and the graph editor. One thing that I do want you guys to do as a part of the setup and show it in a snapshot is that you're going to zoom in on the character in your render cam. This camera here is a little bit far. The character is tiny and hard to see. So I'm going to ask you to select this camera, unlock the attributes. You know how to unlock? And simply zoom in a little bit closer to get the character into the position that he's going to be walking in. So we can see him well. Slightly 3/4. So now I can lock this again. Okay, so I would like you to create, adjust the camera and lock it. I do not care if you're looking from the left to the right or from the right to the left. And character should not be facing flat, straight to the camera and shouldn't be in profile. So certain range of 3/4 will be fine.
Unlock selected.
So the rig, so just main notes about the rig. The main control on the ground, it's really just to orient the character, and that character is oriented well. It does not to be changed, does not need to be. Okay. So what there is something that I'm going to ask you to do. So if I click on that main control, is here. See in the Chatterbox editor, there is resolution. If you click on the name low, offers you lower I. Change it to high resolution. And you don't have to do this, but if you want to change your character's color, you will go under color and change its color. And if you do this before you start working, you don't even have to key anything yet. Okay, so otherwise, again, we're not going to use or do anything with this large control on the ground. There is this box for the feet. So when I click on the foot, it gives me a bunch of controls for the feet. And that's what I was mentioning before and showing in PDF. There's certain feet controls that we're going to use and certain that we won't use. It might sound a little bit complicated. It's not really that complicated, and we stay consistent. Basically, if I click on heel, main heel, and then go and bring my cursor to one of those two windows, press and hold the middle mouse. By moving it right or left, I'm changing the angle of the foot. Okay? So we're going to use this to angle the foot, yes?
For those controls, do you just want us to punch in the values that are in the PDF?
No, I would like you to do it this way, preferably by clicking on the name and then moving the key.
But do you want us to get to those same values?
You don't have to create exactly the same values. No, you create the angle that you prefer. So if you prefer your foot have small, tiny angle, that will be fine. If it's going a little bit larger, that's fine. What I don't want is that you do something that it obviously cannot do. It hurts your character and looks like it's broken. But I'm not going to give you specific number values. If you want to decide, okay, this looks good to me, and I'm going to round it up to 17, that's fine with me. Type in number 17, press enter. You will still need to press the key O after you do this.
Question.
Go ahead.
For the feet, I know it's mentioned in the PDF, but just for my notes here, we're using the heel, and then I think there's 3 controls we're allowed to use on the feet.
On the contacts, for the front foot, you're going to use the heel. For the back foot, you're going to use the lift heel.
Okay.
You see, so when I click on lift heel and move it to the right or left, I'm raising the heel. And notice how the toes stay in place. So that helps us not to pivot on one point without sliding.
Okay, and obviously we can use the translation.
You will, when you're lifting the leg up, you're going to use the normal translation. Okay. When you're lifting the leg up to get the tilt, this is what makes it a little bit complicated. When you're raising your foot up, we have the rule: do not use the heel and leg heel. Okay. You're only using it on contacts when the foot is touching the ground.
The rest of the time we're using rotate?
Yeah. When you're lifting the leg up, you're going to create an angle by using a toe tip. So click on toe tip, and this will create an angle. And for the sake of consistency, try all of you use those controls, unless you really forget. And the other thing you want, when the leg is raised up and traveling forward, you want to bend toes backwards for the drag. So for that, we're using a toe lift. So anytime you're raising the foot off the ground, you will really use the toe tip, toe lift, and translate Y. For the contacts, you're going to use the front foot, heel, back foot, lift, heel. Okay? And the other foot that's on the ground on a passing pose, well, it's just flat on the ground, so everything, or most of the things, will have no values because it's going to be flat. Okay. So we come back to that later. So, well, while we at the feet, so the first thing, before I forget, you simply select one leg, press E, and turn Carter's toes just slightly away from each other for the balance. And key it, that's the key all. So this, if you do it on the first pose, that'll make sure that every other pose has the same rotation. Yes?
How do you get the render cam to automatically like shrink down when you push the border to the right? Because when I push, you know how in the 3-point axis you could change the size of each panel? Not the X, the 3-panel view. You could change each panel's size. You normally with the render cam, if
You mean this? Or
oh yeah, that's cut off for me.
so did that answer your question?
Well, no, how do I make it so it's not cut off?
Oh no, I didn't know that. I'll have to check that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's because my camera does try to scale with it. It does get cut off a little bit. Does it get cut off more than this?
Yeah, because my.
So you just key your.
I have
After
to
you
look and
rotate
check it. I never got the question before.
Oh, you just moved
you
them
for
up.
me.
I mean, that's just.
Okay, so we move the feet, rotate the feet slightly away from each other. And to do this, I simply use the rotate Y of each foot. And notice that one foot gets the positive value rotation, and the other one, since it turns in the opposite direction, gets the negative. And if you want to, you can have those same number values in there. So if I turn this one for in negative 16, I can take the other foot and make that positive 16. You can have exactly the same. It is actually okay to have a little bit difference from one to the other side. So little imperfection, because overly symmetric makes it also overly stiff. You don't want to have those values also to be too different, because if your target does on one step something really extremely, and on another step it barely does it, then it's going to look like it's limping. So there is always a good kind of judgment what you're doing there. As far as the feet go, there's something you can do, but you don't have to. If you want to, you can just move each foot slightly under the Carter's body, so he doesn't walk wide-legged. It's not a problem if you keep the feet at 0, but this is possibility. So when you do this, basically it changes the thrust at X of the feet. So one leg right now is 1.5, so I guess I can round it up to 1.5. The other one would be, in that case, negative 1.5. So this just simply makes character less cowboy walking. Maybe if you're animating a girl, you will not do such a wide steps. This is optional. Okay, so what else do we have on this character? Those pyramid shape in front of the knees, there are pole vectors to tweak the position of the knees. For this assignment, you really don't have to do anything with them. Just make sure that they somehow don't end up back behind the character, and so you don't break his leg. On a similar note, we have the elbow pole vectors, which need to stay behind the character. So probably having a little more distance between the body and those will be better. And again, you're just going to use certain tweak of the elbow position. You don't have to really, it's not required that you use them. Again, just make sure that you don't break that arm by getting this where it shouldn't be. Okay. So there is this curve that goes around the hips or around the waist. That's the COG or car or hips. This is for doing the main body rotations in the hips. So by pressing E, you can do the Z rotation or Y rotation. So see how this tool, the circle, it has 3 inside curves, and there is one that catches all of those and kind of lines up with your point of view. Please, guys, just use the 3 inside curves. Don't use the outside control, because this rotates in all 3 axes. So if you want to only rotate character in Z, if you use this, you're going to also rotate in X and Y. So it's going to create problems. So this is for advanced animators who know why are using it and when they need a little bit of rotation in all 3 axes. But when you're trying to be precise, simply use the inside selection curves. Does that make sense? There is one thing in relation to those rotations and translations, and one more setting that I just remembered. Let's just double check this. Most likely it's already set up that way. But I want to check the tool settings. So if I go to the top right corner, okay, so there is one of those icons. Settings. Okay. So it looks like a hammer with 3 nails. Opens up your tool settings window. And all I want to do is to make sure that my rotate and move tools axis is oriented to world. Okay. So if you press W, that's not working right.
How do you get
You should see the move settings. See, so it says axis orientation, it says world. So if it says object, please change it to world. And then press E and also have the rotate axis orientation set to world. That means regardless of which direction you turn the body parts, your tool will always be set up in the world space. This will also prevent you moving the foot sideways when you think you're just moving it forward.
this one?
And there are occasions when you would want your tool settings to actually adjust to the body. That's when you are posing a static
Did I
pose.
just do the wrong thing?
This pose is for the progression. It moves through the space, so it's
Doing
better to
W.
keep it in world.
W.
And again, this is just one of the rules that makes it easier in this specific situation. If you have a reason to do it any other way, that's okay, as long as you know what you're doing and why. Okay, so let's take a look at some other. So tail has has 4 joints. We will not use the first one that goes through the kind of where the legs connect to the body. So if I click on this, it was not keyed, so it's not included in our key all. This control we will not use. So if you're going to position the tail, you select all 3 of them, kind of same as with the spine, and try to get the basic position of the tail by doing all 3 of them at once. Yes, I can select one control and do something individually. It does not produce good results because you cannot bend your spine on just one vertebra. Okay, as far as the tail really goes, it's really nice if you try to present in a tail position the emotion of your character. Okay? If your character is sad, it might be very likely that his tail will be hanging down, kind of like his antennae. I will really not be grading the tail, so if you don't do anything, you'll be fine with the tail. But if you want better looking poses, pose the tail as well. So then we have the 3 spine controls. Yes, I could kind of marquee select all 3 of them at once, but this is still harder than just going to the spine mail button and clicking on it. Okay. So this creates a nice arc in the spine. So going up the spine, there is a curve that again was not keyed. So that we will not use the one that the control that is laying on shoulders, ignoring it. And one up is control called neck up, and this is the control we will be using to turn and tweak and keep the head in place. Please do so for me. Why are we using the neck? Well, if you're turning the neck and up and down, again, it does affect the arc of the neck. It does not rotate and pivot on one point inside of the head. It actually bends. So this looks a little more realistic. If it starts breaking, which it won't, because we will be looking up, but you would not want to do this. In this case, I would just, okay, this still looks acceptable. In that case, I would start using the head if my character needed to look up for something. And that might be the case in our next project. So please use the neck up for controlling the head. So back there, we have two arrows pointing at shoulders. If you press W, you can tweak the shoulder position, but you can also break them. So be aware of it. You really don't need to do anything with the shoulder controls for this assignment. This is more for precision tweaking of the arm. Okay, we mentioned the arm pull vectors back there. So by clicking on the box, pressing W, you can move the arm. When you press E, you can rotate the wrist. So this is the arm positioning and hand. There is a control that looks like a hand. When you click on it, it gives you a bunch of the finger joints. So if you needed to tweak the hand position, and I always like to start with a control that's called fist. So if I click on a fist and use the middle mouse technique, I can really fast relax the arm, like kind of being bent as it's relaxed. I can create a tension if I'm stretching it out, or another tension if I'm creating a wrist. So I can do this really fast simply by changing that value and keying it. This is optional for this assignment, but again, really nice if your pose reflects the emotion of the walk. For all of this, and any change you do, you will press that keyhole button to save what you did. Okay, so the other side of the arm is the same. Then we have the eye controls. Really, what you need to do is the main control. You see it has three curves, the individual eye controls, and then the one that catches both of them. Most of the time, 99%, you're just simply working with the main control. Avoid messing up with the eyes individually. Unless you want to have cross-eyed character. I think that would be funny. I guess you can do a little bit of make sure that the eyes, specifically the pupils of the eyes, are always visible. They should not be disappearing. With the eye control, you'll also have to make sure that it always stays in front of the character, which is not a problem when you do walk in a place. But when you do forward walk, then that can be a problem. Okay, go ahead.
So, just noticing the eye control moves forward and backward, is there any specific reason why it does that?
Your eye can focus on something that's close, and can focus on something that's far. So that's one of the reasons.
So you can place the eye control on top of whatever the character's looking at, and it's kind of
You
like,
could and have it walk towards it.
and it's guaranteed that the character's eyes will be locked on.
Keep
because
looking
they're
at
controlled.
it, yeah. There's just danger sometimes if you lock the arms at something that can look too stiff.
Okay.
We do have a little bit of imperfection. So I would be careful with locking the eyes. So if you kind of keep them on a good, nice distance, it will not feel locked, but it will also not be changing too much. So I think the default position is fine for what we're doing. Because if you kind of move them too far or too close, they can be wobbling during the walk. Like your eyes can go left and right constantly, which will look weird.
Does this character have the ability to blink? Does it?
Yes,
Is
we're
that
getting up to it.
Okay, sorry.
It's kind of big. Okay, so question was about the blinks, but we'll get to it. So the control over the head, I would not use the neck up to turn the control the head, although you could use this. We have the individual joints for the antennae, so you can bend individual joint of the antennae, but also there are the circular shapes controls, curves, that are kind of where the antennae meet the head. If you click on this, this is kind of like select all for the antennae. So this catches the antennae uniformly. So those are the controls I would really start posing the antennae with to get the basic bend or stretch of the antennae. And then if I need, I might use the individual 1 or 2 joints, which is not, again, required. So really, for this assignment, what I would do is, the easiest thing is selecting at least one of the antennae and then make it slightly bent differently than the other one. Okay, so that might not be perfect, but it does meet the requirements of not keeping the antennae symmetrical.
We don't have to animate them kind of flexing a little bit as they walk.
That's what we're going to be adding later. So
Okay.
you don't have to do this while you're blocking out the contacts and passing forwards.
Okay.
Although you could, but just let's leave it for later. That's a secondary action.
Yeah.
We need the motion of the antennae, but we don't need the bounce yet.
Okay.
At this point. So now, if I click on letter M, I get all the blends in here for the mouth. So mouth, M is for mouth. And if you scroll down, there are also, okay, we don't need it. So, so by using the mouth shapes, and really, guys, I'm not requiring that you do, but if you want to, you can, as I said, add some emotion. So if I wanted my character to smile, there's a right and left smile. If I click on them individually, I'm just posing one side of the body. So I can actually select both the right and left controls here in its channel box editor, and then use the middle mouse to create the smile on both sides of the mouth at once. Okay. When you smile, your cheeks puff a bit, so I can go to the right and left cheek puff, highlight it, and then use the middle mouse to create a little bit of puffy cheeks. Yeah. And then remember to key when you do something like this. So my character is smiling. If you want to do anything more, you're going to need to explore those controls and see what they do. I don't have time to teach this, and it's optional. The letter B, so if I click on letter B, it stands for the eyebrows. Whoever rigged it, they decided to use the letter B. Okay, so again, you will have to explore on your own. So if I go to the right control that says down and select, let's say, the right and mid, and then I can simply go and see, oh, I see what this does. This raises the eyebrow up and down. So you decide, okay, I want the character to be happy, sneaky. If you want to keep it, key it. If not, if you don't key it, you're going to lose it. So put a little basic emotion in that walk, if you can. Okay. I'm going to stop here with the emotions. So really, this is all before we kind of really get into the specifics of the walk poses. Okay, so I have established now the main emotion of the walk, so now I can start focusing on that first contact. So I want to stress out the important part. Contacts will only have Y rotations. So nothing else on that pose, or no other, you don't need to rotate the body around any other axis. So when I say the main body rotations, I mean the hips, 3 spine controls, and neck up. So when we rotate those, we want to do the Y rotation. Let me show you. Before I do the rotations, let's get the feet in the right position, because feet, the body is being supported by the feet. So if you put the feet in the right position, you have more chances of getting the hips in the right position. So, doesn't matter which foot you move forward, that's your choice. I just arbitrarily selected the right foot, so I'm gonna press W and move it a little bit forward. I'm just eyeballing how much. I can select the back foot and move it a little bit back, and I press E-All. Okay, so now you could do a walk by creating the arbitrary size of a step, but I'm gonna ask you, for the sake of making it easier to control the backward motion of the foot, I'm going to ask you to use a specific value. Okay, so this foot, when I moved it forward, I have created a translate Z value, because that's the axis in which we move the foot. So I did, just by eyeballing, I created 13.1. I'm going to ask you guys, please make this 12. So this is one thing where I'm specific. So move that forward foot, front foot, move it to positive 12. So type in 12 and press E-All. Take the back foot and make it negative 12, please. Okay. Yes, different cards is going to have different size of a step. So this is not the size of a step that you would always do, but for this walk, please do it so. Why? Because number 12 is easy to divide in halves and control how much the foot moves backwards for each ring. So enter and key. Okay, so I could now play with heel and lift heel to position the feet correctly. But before I do that, now I'm gonna do the body rotations, because body rotations affect the legs and feet. So to be able to get the feet perfectly, I need to have the body rotations done. And then I told you before that we need the feet before we can do the body rotation. So I am kind of jumping from body parts, depending on the what needs to be done. Okay, so I did need to have the basic size of a step. Okay, so now I can take care of the rotations. So if I select the hips, so this is really important to remember and always do. Always start with the hips when you're creating the rotations and when you're checking them, or when you're fixing the body rotations. Always do the hips first. Make sure the hips are right. There's no point in trying to get the neck rotation if the hips are not done, because everything else is affected by the hips. Does that make sense? So you always start hips, low back, mid back, up back, and then the last will be the neck up. Okay, so now, this is a basic common sense and mechanics of motion. If I'm, or this character is taking a step with the right foot forward, this simply turns our hips away from that leg. Does that make sense? So hips will not turn into the leg. This is uncomfortable. Try it. I mean, you do. I look like I have to go pee. So if I'm taking step with this foot, it rotates hips that way. And it seems logical. I still have many students who turn the hips into the leg because they're probably not careful. They just look graph editor or something and, oh, it's rotating in Y, it must be good. So you have to make sure, turn. Roughly have that elongated part of the control and a point somewhere halfway between two legs. I'm not going to give you a specific number, just going to tell, don't do something that breaks the character. This is too much. I hope you understand why.
Another question.
Go ahead.
So for this rotational selection, are we gonna, because I noticed you have the cog shift selected here. Are we only supposed to use our spine selection script for this, or are we supposed to use the cog shift with the spine as well, or rotating the characteristics for this rotation?
Hips, you have to use, I said it before, I'm repeating, hips, low back, mid back, and neck up to create the total body rotations.
Okay.
So the point to remember is that the spine will be turning in opposite direction from the hips.
Yes.
So when you rotating the hips in a certain position, you will not do it together with the spine because spine needs to turn opposite.
Okay.
If that was your question, if you should do them at the same time.
Yeah, it was.
You need to do the hips first and then the spine.
And the hips are that center of gravity.
Yes. So
Okay.
you see, the name says cog hips.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can refer to it as a cog or hips. So
Okay.
Hopefully it'll make sense. But yeah. So really, I'm starting with the hips. That's the power center. It's where the movement comes from, and it's also set up from the reading point as the arrow. Okay, so basically the hips. So notice when I do this rotation, only rotation I ended up here. There are three possible things: rotate X, rotate Y, rotate Z. Only rotate Y as a value. Okay. If you end up with X or Z rotation, simply zero it out. Take it out. Keep it simple. You have to press the heel. So now we're going to the spine. So once I turn the spine, I turn the hips away from the leg, take a step forward. I need to press the spine select, and of course press E to get the rotate tool if you have something else active. So all I'm doing is now, I was turning the spine from the left to the right, so that means, I'm sorry, did I say it wrong? I was turning hips from left to the right, so spine needs to turn from the right to the left. See? When I do this, see the spine controls? How the elongated part of the spine gradually is turning the left of the screen. I want to key this. Okay. So now, why? That's the tendency in our body. If I take a step with this leg forward, my body does this. Turns this direction. So that's what we're doing, really. Since the head is following the rotation of the spine, when we get the spine correctly, the head will be slightly looking sideways. So the final step is, after we key this, is click on the neck up and look from the orthographic front view. And simply just turn this head in Y until it's looking straight. When I key this, see, in the channel box editor, I still have created, but by getting the head back straight, I have created a Y rotation value. So this is what we want. We want our character to kind of walk and have the body rotation in there, but the head will be focused on whatever the character is doing there. This. And what's left is now taking care of the feet. So now I can click on the selection box, and the front foot, if you remember what I said, we're going to use the heel to create desired angle of that front foot. We're going to use toe lift to keep the toes dragging up. Why? Because the idea is the foot is traveling down and toes are trying to stay where they were, so they're kind of bending up. They step behind the heel. And I key that. You see the selection box is in a place. Click on the other foot. This foot appears to be doing what it needs to, but it's not doing it correctly. You see how this leg is overextended and locked? For that you lose points. That's a technical issue. iCare lock. So what you really need to remember, the back foot, you need to add the lift heel. So click on the lift heel. And it might take, initially you might think it's doing nothing. So don't give up. So press the middle mouse and keep moving it to the right. And at some point, you see the knee will start relaxing. So when you get the knee to relax a little bit, then you're fine. So key that. So basically it means that we're controlling the lift of the heel by a specific value here. Before, the heel was lifting because the hips were pulling them up. The pull vector of this leg, I would just keep safely a little more further away from the knee, because it can start distorting it. Okay, so this is all you need to do with the feet on contacts. By using those controls and different controls for back and front foot. Legs should not be overextended and locked. They should not be lifting off the ground. The ground level is the translated Y0, and the same rule that we had for the bouncing ball. Okay? So this box, you see the translated Y is at 0, and you can see that the heel is touching the ground, especially if you're going to look from the orthographic side view. And that's what we're looking for. So what's left is just the arms. Arm swing, you can choose how large or how much of the arm swing you're going to have. I would recommend try to stay close to what we're doing here if possible. So I need to get them down, press E to create some comfortable wrist angle. You can, you can vary it. You can do different. You can, if you want to, you can have a cartwheel walk like this. The rule is there needs to be some swing. You can have more extreme of a swing, or you can have it very subtle, but you cannot have no swing. That's no good. So there has to be some pattern of the arm swing that you can control and manipulate in the curves, the graph editor. Okay, so important part to remember, guys, it's a common sense. Take a note which leg is forward. Okay, so if the right foot is forward, which arm will be forward? It seems so obvious, but every month there's a student who does not pay attention and makes the character walking fine. Make sure the arms don't penetrate the tail or any body part. So I have my first contact done. So if you get it that far, okay. So really important part, there are some students who somehow don't hear me when I ask the contact should have no Z rotation. And they follow their feelings about, this pose should have this rotation. And for some reason they add to the contacts a little bit of Z. Please don't do that. Okay, so Z rotations are in this walk, they're going to be established on passing poses. Okay. So leave these Z rotations for the passing poses. Okay, so having one contact. Can't see the board. I'm just going to talk. Let's see the time. 40:27. I really need to speed up here. Okay. Since it's a limited length cycle, limited number of poses, I'm going to ask you see those two boards or windows? Set this one to 24 and set this one to 25. That is the length of our animation. 4 and 25. Center, make sure you start at frame 1. Here we should have 1 and 1. Okay, so we are having a second of video here. Why? Because our first contact is going to be in frame 1. Our final contact is going to be on frame 25. So I should be able to extend the timeline to 25. So if I go to 25 and press my key all, just like that, I have two key poses, the first and last one. Okay, so important part, the first pose on 1 and pose on 25 need to be exactly the same. So remember, if you do adjustment to one of those two poses, you need to copy and paste the adjustment to the other one. Make sense? Okay, so now the third contact. Third contact will be in frame 13. Okay, so we establishing contacts on 12s. 1 plus 12 is 13, 13 plus 12 is 25. And we're going back to 1. Really, the 25 and 1 are the same pose. We just need to have a key on 25 so Maya can in between on frames 22, 23, and 24. And there will be another technique that will make Maya just repeat this whole motion over and over. So don't worry about any more keys. So now, to get the third contact, I click on frame 13. Okay, so is it logical? What I'm doing now, I'm simply creating a mirror pose for my pose number 1.
For this assignment,
What do you mean for this assignment?
we're creating a really simple walk for this assignment, but in reality, your poses would be not exactly the same.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but I'm just giving you an easy way to doing a simple cycle. The point I'm making is, if your first contact has those rotations and this position, you're doing this.
Yep.
Yes, my pose is not 100% same.
Yeah.
Or mirrored,
But it's close.
but it's close. Okay. So you're right.
Do you want us to mirror? Do you want us to mirror?
It's easier if you do. So I'm showing a simple technique.
Okay.
So this is the easiest way to do this, what I'm showing.
Okay.
You don't have to mirror if you don't want to.
Okay.
So I could, why is it easier? Because I can simply copy the pose from 1 here. It's basically, if I click on frame 13 in timeline and press the key Alt, I now have 3 exactly the same poses. So if I take now the copy of frame 1 on frame 13, I'm just taking it as a starting point. So isn't it logical now that if I make sure now in frame 13, I select this front foot, and if I go to the translate Z value, and I change it from positive 12 to negative 12, I'm moving the leg back. Then if I take the other foot, change from negative value to positive, I can move the, you see I'm switching the leg.
Yep.
So now, the legs look broken because I need to still adjust the heel, lift heel, and that stuff.
But just shift everything negative to positive.
Yes, but sometimes there's some things you have to be careful about what you're shifting. Some things should not be shifted.
Okay.
So hips. So if I go to the hips, I'm really dealing with the Y rotation. So if I have positive value here, I need to make it negative. You see how that has turned the hips? Make sense, guys? On the right, on my right side there, that side. Yeah, and what you said, yes, I can do exactly the same or similar thing. I can simply select the hips and do this and key it. Then I'm not getting exactly the same number value. That's perfectly fine. But isn't it just easier to change from positive to negative value?
Way easier, yeah.
And we're just learning technique now. It's not about. So basically, if I'm using previous pose, reverse that rotation. So trying to hurry here. Negative, enter, and key. So you have to now remember, don't forget the spine. Spine needs to be rotating opposite from the hips. So since we reverse the hip rotation, we also need to reverse the spine rotation. So if I use my spine select, if I go again, see the value I have, and change it from negative to positive in this case, I turn the spine the opposite direction, key it, don't forget to key, and now again, the head is looking sideways, but if I select that neck up, change the polarity of the number, I'm getting the head looking straight again. So what's left is tweaking the feet and the arms. Do you understand thing about reversing the spine rotations? How that mirror the pose? And yes, this creates a little bit of even poses, but for purposes of redo, that's fine.
In any other assignment, we want to tweak everything all the way.
A little bit, yeah. You would try to find low difference or make it slightly less even and same. It also depends. I mean, for some productions, this is perfectly fine. They don't care about walk feeling a little bit even.
In a
Because they
video
don't-
game, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have such a high, demands. Anyway, feet. So feet. Since Cobbett pose started this pose by copying from the previous pose, the feet are not doing what they need to do, and have doing something that they shouldn't. So the front foot should have no lifted heel. So I'm going to zero that out to put the foot back down, and I'm going to actually use the heel to create the angle. Doesn't have to be exactly the same angle as the other foot. Here, create toe lift. Here. That's front foot. Click on the back foot. So the back foot, we have the heel being lifted, lifting the toes up, which we don't need to. We'll zero that out. And we do want to control the lift of the heel. Let's put the toes down. So toe lift also needs to be zeroed out. Here. And what we want to control is the lifting of the heel by the control name lift heel. So I'm going to add a little bit of the lift heel. I would not add too much of the lift heel, guys. And that's the feet. I like to keep the pole vectors as safe distance. Its final thing is to reverse the arms. Again, the arms position as they swing back and forward also doesn't have to be perfectly same. I'm really eyeballing it right now. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Okay, so there is a reason why I asked you to have 24 frames on one of those little windows. Because when you're creating a video, please create a 24 frame long video. Okay? Because you don't want to repeat the pose on 25 and have the one again. It's going to feel on a transition as a little stop if you do so. Because you're going to repeat the same pose twice. So when you're looking at your videos, make sure you're looking at the 24 frames, and that's what you're going to playblast from.
So why did you have us make the 25th frame in a curiosity?
So you can key the pose on 25.
Okay.
So when I want to work on a pose, I extend it to 25, and I can see the key there. But when I only have the 24 frames, I cannot work with the pose on 25. That's the only reason why.
Okay.
Details that how this is stepped. How can I say that?
So the final thing today, I'm going to add a passing pose here. Just one passing pose. I'm not going to do both of them, but you can see what it takes. I'm just looking at some settings here. If you want this animation to keep looping, you can change this setting here, looping from once to continuous. Then it's going to feel like the cycle is repeating. Okay, that makes sense? What I just said. Okay, so the idea of remembering the contacts only have Y rotation, that makes sense? I did not do any rotation else in that contact pose. If you're doing some other walk, you know, you could have some other rotation, but don't do it here. This is going to keep it easier to show that you understand the basic body rotations. Okay, so the passing poses. Passing poses will be now splitting the time that we gave to context. So when we add the passing poses, our keys will be 6 frames apart. So on 7, we're going to have passing pose, and on frame 19. So I'm going to just create a passing pose on frame 7. So I need to click on frame 7. So I could create a passing pose either from a T pose, or I can use a previous pose, or I can use Maya in between. So I'm going to use Maya in between as my starting point. Doesn't really matter. Why do I use Maya in between? Because sometimes Maya gives us some things that we can use and keep. That kind of helps us to speed us up. So you don't have to do everything from complete scratch. Using Maya in between also has dangers because you can go, oh, that's good enough, when it's not. Okay? Maya cannot do a good pose on its own, so you always need to, when you're using Maya breakdowns or in-betweens to create poses or breakdowns, you always need to do changes to it to make it a good, strong pose. So it's okay to use it as a starting point, and that's what I'm going to do here. So to do so, I need to select all. I need to switch to auto tangents by clicking on the auto tangent icon. So this gives me now Maya in between here. So I'm going to take whatever is on frame 7, and I'm going to take it simply by keying that in between on frame 7. So press the key all. And I will immediately switch back to stepped. I want to keep working in stepped, guys. So now I have a little bit of weird in between, which I want to turn into correctly done passing pose. So correctly done passing pose meets server requirements. Okay, so I'm just demonstrating here first. One of the requirements, the hips will have translated in X. This is me translating my hips in X. You see the side to side. The other requirement is it needs to have Z rotations. Z rotations are hips tilting down when I raise the foot up. So the foot with raised foot is going to move this side of the hips down. It's a Z rotation. And that's going to tilt my spine in the opposite direction, which is a Z rotation. And then I'm going to level the head, which is also a Z rotation. So remember, write it down if you can. In the passing poses, you're establishing the extremes of translate X and rotate Z. Passing poses will have no other rotation, no Y or no X. Some of you guys look like you're getting headaches for all this information. I hope not. But before we get to the rotations and translations, let's just take care of the feet. So foot that's carrying the weight, identify it. Is it the left or is it the right foot? What did it have previously? Which foot is forward? Right foot. So the right foot's going to carry the weight. So if I go from 1 to 7, the right foot needs to be on the ground. If I use Maya in between, Maya did not put it down on the ground. So I need to make sure this foot is on the ground. What's keeping it up? Well, it's the heel and lift heel. Zero those out. I get the foot on the ground. It's also the toe lift. Okay. So key this. So I got the foot down on the ground, flat on the ground, as it should be. Okay, so what else did Maya do? You see the translate Z is the backwards motion. It has put this foot at the 0. This is what I want. I want the foot go from positive 12 to 0, negative 12. Okay, it's a halfway between two positive and negative 12s. It's 0. The other foot needs to be going from the back, passing forward. So it kind of looks like it's doing it, but it's not doing it right. So we need to put this foot back down. So we don't want to use the heel and lift heel to raise the foot up. I mentioned that before. So I'm going to 0 the heel and lift heel. And what did I say I want to use? I want to use the toe lift to create a tilt, which also raises the foot up a bit. toe tip gets the angle and starts raising the foot, we want to keep the toes bent down by using the toe lift. So now we have one problem. This foot is going through the ground. Simply press W and raise the box up to the desired height here. Okay. So anytime you're raising the foot up, you're going to use those three controls. Please, give it a try. Yes?
Do you want the foot to be coming past the leg already in the passing pose?
I'm going to let you decide how much forward. You can move it a little bit more forward or keep it a little more back or just passing. And so this range is up to you. You should not put it too much forward and don't leave it too much back. So it is kind of in the process of passing that other foot. Does that answer your question? So this is where you can have a freedom of how much you want to angle the foot that's raised and how high you want to have it and how much of a forward progression it has made. So again, if you move it too much back, then it's getting too close to what we're doing on the down pose. So you don't want it to look too much. It needs to be a passing pose. So something either starts passing, it's passing it, or it's just passed it a little bit. So good question. So that's all you have to do with the feet. Make sure you key so you don't lose what you've done. So now you can take care of the balance of the character, which is the translation in X. So you click on the hips or the cog, press W, and all you need to do is to move the hips slightly over the leg that's on the ground. When you key it, it's going to create a translate X value. You see this, that one point that has moved down in the negative values, that's done by me moving the hips to the side. That makes sense? If I move this key in a graph editor, you can see how I move the body. Make sense? So you see, for some reason, I have students who probably don't look at the pose and they just take the graph editor and move the key and make the character unbalanced. This is not good. Can you tell that? Well, character balance doesn't have to be much, just little side translation and key it. Make sure that the arms don't penetrate those hips. So if you start penetrating, just move the arm a little bit away. Or if you want this arm to follow, yeah, you can move it to the right. Okay, so that's the translate X. So on the other passing pose on 19, the other foot is going to be on the ground, and hips going to be translating the other direction. That's obvious, I hope. It's a big struggle with me because students just don't want to do this. Some students, for some reason, they think that, I don't know why. Maybe because in 2D animation you cannot animate the character move sideways or something. Anyway, let's just finish this. A few more minutes. You have questions?
Never mind.
You're almost done, guys. I promise. So what's left is the S curve of the passing pose, which we create by adding the Z rotations. Okay? We're starting with the hips. So select the hips, press E, and the rule is the leg that's raised up is going to pull same side of the hips down, which means you need to rotate the hips this way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So there will be many of you fighting me on this. You will just it will just look more logical to you to do this. Okay? Please don't fight me on this. Okay? You're not wrong if you're doing some other walk, but for this walk, this is wrong. Okay? Makes sense? Think of it. Like if you're raising the foot, when you take a step forward, what happens? Look at me. I have to do this. Doesn't look like I'm a cowboy. You know? There's something a little bit wrong with me. Okay. And yes, it's funny. You might have a character that's going to walk that way, but not everybody. Most of the people, when they raise the foot up, the hips fall down. Especially women. You know? You can see it more obviously. So please, okay, take a note which foot is raised and then drop the side of the hips towards them. Here, take also note that when you tilt the hips like this, it's gonna overextend the leg. So you see the heel is kind of starting to lift up. We don't want to have that, so just take the hips and just get the foot back on the ground. Okay. So now since the body follows, he's gonna leaning sideways. So that's the moment where you use the spine and counter rotates. So we tilted the hips, his left side is down. So for the spine, we're gonna get the right side down. So it's opposite rotation, makes sense? And you see I'm creating nice S-curve in the body. Here, and then click on the neck up, and just simply try to level the eyes. It doesn't have to be perfectly level, just close to the level eyes and here. That's our passing pose. So final thing would be making sure the arms are having nice arc to their swing, and that we maybe try achieving a little bit of the drag in the wrist and a whip action. Okay. So the simple way would be simply choose whichever arm you want to start with. Take a note where it was on a previous key. So that means this arm is moving forward. You see how Maya has moved the arm in a straight line? But that's not good. So I want to move this arm a little bit down to create a stronger arc. I also want to move it a little bit more back as for the drag. And I also want to use the change in angle of the wrist to reinforce the drag, the change in the wrist angle. Okay, so key that. See how there's a little change in the wrist as the fingers are dragging behind, and the arm just starts passing the body. So if I apply the similar logic from the other arm, so I look where it was before, so it's forward and swinging backwards. Okay, so it's moving in a straight line, so I'm going to take this arm and move it a tiny bit down to create a stronger arc. I'm going to move it a tiny bit forward, so it just starts passing the body, and then create drag of the fingers by bending the wrist and keying it. See, I'm kind of creating a little bit of a drag in the arm, so it stays closer to where it was before it swings back. You can follow the arm swing that you did in 2D animation. You will also be accepted, and you're going to do fine as well. This is a slightly different approach than what you did in 2D animation. Make sense? So basically, pose of 19 will be mirror pose of this one.
Can you put that in auto tangents real quick? I just want to see how terrible of a job Maya does in between the contact there passing with no up or down.
Too horrible. Okay, there is one advantage of using Maya in-betweens. If you do those body rotations correctly on contacts and passing poses, Maya will actually do a pretty good job for the body rotations. You might need to do little tweaks, but
That's fine. I'm really surprised it looks a lot better than I thought it would with just a contact and pass.
well, but it is actually because you know, as I said, passing pose actually defines the arcs.
Yeah.
So he's doing the breakdown job.
Yeah.
So it
Just
does
the length
connect,
going
and
on.
it makes it look better because it's really
That fell? Okay, you know what? We're gonna
making
have
sure
breaks
that
soon,
everything
so
moves
we'll
in
go
the
on
same
the hall.
direction
We'll go
at
on
the
the
same
hall.
time, and that is
Okay,
okay, so really, guys, that's the goal. If you can do, set up your scene, create your mel buttons, and
It might be upstairs.
try to do 3 contacts and 2 passing poses correctly. Okay? So saying this, every month I have a student or 2 who does all 5 poses. They even start doing up and down poses before we had lecture about them, and none of them is done correctly. Like all the body rotations are wrong. There's no purpose for it, guys. This is not about how much you do. It's about how
Willing.
correct it is.
Yeah,
It's quality versus the quantity. And yes, it's important to be fast, but we're building up to it. Okay? So if you just give me 2 or 3 correctly done poses, I'll be happier than if you give me 9 incorrect poses. Anyway, there's Darko. I'm gonna let you go on a break now. Unless if you have a question, you can ask me one-on-one.